Jiva Korja, good evening. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, or if you're watching a recording of this. So welcome to another Fireside Chat. This is our 83rd one, where I'm in conversation with a member of the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. So you're all very welcome, and I will start, as I have begun for the last number of months, to start with a prayer for peace. Gamara Shiakon a fud na crinne, Gamara Shiakon in our jaili agus in our jirha. Ganairi linlan our garmaka, Gamich buikas jeev, Jehe quivdaka is spirit quivdaka. May peace prevail on earth. May peace prevail in our homes and in our countries. May our missions be accomplished. We thank you, guardian spirits and guardian deities. And this is a piece by John O'Donoghue. For peace. As the fever of day calms towards twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. We pray for all who suffered violence today. May an unexpected serenity surprise them. For those who risk their lives each day for peace, may their hearts glimpse providence at the heart of history. That those who make riches from violence and war might hear in their dreams the cries of the lost. That we might see through our fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. That those who enjoy the privilege of peace might not forget their tormented brothers and sisters. That the wolf might lie down with the lamb, that our swords be beaten into plowshares, and no hurt or harm be done anywhere along the holy mountain. So just let me see where you're all from. There's Lisa from Washington, Ardna Murkin. Hi, John and Lynn. Hi, hot in Edinburgh. Yes, it's sunny and warm in Ireland. Won't be roasting hot. Ava from Belgium, Sue from Northamptonshire. Lovely to see you. The Netherlands, Killaloe, Ballina, lovely in Ireland. Sunny London. Hi, Ferdinand, hot in London. And you're buried under a pile of marking, you poor thing. It's that time of year. And hello from New Orleans. Lovely. And New Hertfordshire, New Forest. That's lovely. Hi, Crouch End. That's Philippa. Lovely to see you all. So let me introduce, and Finland. Oh, great to see people so far away. Let me see where else people are from. Lovely. Washington. Great. So Lancashire, Glastonbury, Arizona. Mrs. Blake says teacher's plight. That's the privilege you have doing exams correcting papers in hot weather. So, and hi, Stephanie from Utah. So let me bring you to my guest this evening. We're going to the UK hi, Fleur Camille. You're so welcome to this Fireside Chat.
Hi, Eimear. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Sat next to the fire.
On this warm day. So, tell us where you are, Fleur.
I live on the Cotswold Way, or on and around the Cotswold Way, in the old lands of the Deboonie. So I suppose that would be the Midlands, that area. So I come from. So that's where I am today. Beautiful landscape with rivers, springs, wells, trees. Liminal landscape here. Yeah. And also
sorry, go on.
Valleys.
Oh, and valleys, lovely. You mentioned the Deboonie. Are you in the Deboonie Grove?
I attend the Grove at the Deboonie in Bristol, yes.
Okay. So I've met you. I think the first time I met you was on the tour in Glastonbury when you had silver hair and it was very short, really glowing on the top of the tour. I don't know how many years ago that was.
Yeah, many moons ago now. Yeah, 2016.
Was it 2016? Okay, so that's 6 years ago. Okay. So Marcella says hello. Obviously, you know Marcella. And Gabriella says hello. So wonderful. So what what has brought you to Druidry?
Well, yeah, I was pondering that question, many things, but I think it started in the 80s, actually, in the late 80s, when I first met some different people then. And I spent quite a lot of time working with them and having a mentor in that space. And then for many years, I stopped, and I went to a place where at the time that was called, I call it the great forgetting, where I forgot everything that I know or had been shown or taught, really. And then I suppose I came in 2016 to Druidry, but it's always been part of my ethos and my living, that connection to nature and the earth and the landscape and story and kindness, and I suppose community. I think that's really, I had not realised that I'd actually missed that sense of community after being on my own, for working on my own or practicing on my own for a really long time. And it was a little bit like a homecoming, coming back into a space where I could breathe a little bit more, and I could speak freely and express myself if I wanted to or not, and that was quite magical for me. Yeah. Coming into a space, and I've met so many amazing women within the order, actually, and men as well. But I think the women that I've met, some of them have really brought a sense of safety and trust into my practice, and that's been quite special for me, actually. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that. What is it that they've brought in that safety for you? What do you think it is?
I think it's authenticity in their path, and the expression of their journey, and their ability to be compassionate and patient, and there's like a quiet, a sense of quiet resonance within them. I suppose it's more felt sense. I work somatically. Most of my expressions are how they feel within me, and that's really what it is for me, I think. Yeah, just knowing, truthful women like that will speak their story and be open to questions.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say, a homecoming, because I certainly felt that myself. And Catherine Fernley says the same. OBOD and Druidry for me is like an extended family. And I think that is, so many people say that, either this is my family, this is my tribe, this is the place where I belong. And maybe for many members have been looking for a long time to find that place. And you talk about that place of authenticity. And we don't talk about authentic Druids, but we talk about authentic people who are authentic.
People. It's really a sense of people and being. And because when I was working a long time ago, had people that around me for a long, long time, and there was this huge sense of community and family and consistency, a consistency. And then to find that again, and to find a place where I can just be who I am, and speak what I want to speak. And if I say something wrong, I say something wrong, or, you know, and that's okay. It's actually okay. You know?
Yes, it's not about perfection and getting it right. And I mean, it has, you know, if it's a home place, this is the place where you get things wrong, and you need to be, you know, you need that safety to try things out and to see, does it work or doesn't it work, without being judged. Gabriella says, I can relate to that perception and experience. OBOD feels safe to me in the energetic sense. One is able to relax around OBOD druids, a sense of safety to be yourself in the world coming home. Yeah. And Blake says, OBOD is such a family that wherever I may find myself in the world at a given time, I know if there's a nobody, I'd be welcomed as family. It's really incredible. Yeah. So how did you find the order?
Oh gosh. Well, I found the order, well, I suppose I truly found the order when I started attending meetings with my partner, but I actually knew people that were in the grove that I was in the 80s. We had a few druids there, and they used to speak to me about druidry and what they were doing. And I was very curious about what they were doing, but I was very young as well. Yeah. So sometimes that was just too much information, working with too much information and learning this from Will Gray, and I'm learning this from other people, and then they've got druidry, and then there's a strong Wiccan community. And in Gloucestershire, there's a really strong pagan community here.
Okay.
So there was so much going on, and I suppose I chose one and stuck with that, and then that felt like it didn't fit anymore. And when I started coming to the OBOD meetings, the gatherings, and coming along, that's when I really thought, yeah, okay, I can be here, and it feels comfortable, and I really like what these people about. Oh, I'm talking about trees and the different meanings of trees, and like the OM. I knew about the OM, and there's other people that know about OM, and then there's so many people that know about that, and there's so many people that are speaking about connecting to the land and the wisdom of the land, and that really resonated with me. And I work with. I'm not a trained plant worker like some of the people in the order, but I've always worked with plants, and it was so I could ask questions. Oh, I use this plant for this, and they, yes, of course it is, yeah. And it was really having affirmations constantly about my path and the journey that I'd been on, leading to this, and then finding somewhere where I could be comfortable. Comfortable. It's very important to feel comfortable.
Absolutely. So, I mean, what you're talking about really is an affirmation of your whole path right up to this point. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. And it was finding people and talking to people and seeing a big community. And because I'd been, it's like there's a lot of people. There's so many people. Oh my gosh, is that going to feel overwhelming? Is that going to feel like this is too much? And it didn't feel like that at all. It was the most wonderful experience, actually, and joyful to meet different people, chat to them, and people would just come up and talk to me. It was so open, so welcoming. I was thinking, I don't know who you are, but thank you for talking to me. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for your curiosity. Thank you. Yeah. And I suppose is that builds that momentum of curiosity and talking to people. And simple conversations can have such magic woven into them, and the stories that people speak about and the things that they do. It's the inspiration as well that allows layers to unfold slowly, like a rose. Rose.
Does a particular story come to mind that you found particularly inspiring?
I think speaking to a woman, Sandy, and she has a similar story, or some connection. There's some threads that she understands about where I was from and my family. They're travel people, and then the way she learned and some of the wisdoms that she imparted about that, and the way that she speaks is like home. It's a feeling of heart. And I remember having a conversation with her and that being really beautiful. And Gabriella, Luna.
Yes.
There's something about the beauty and the safety in a conversation with Gabriella. And when I was doing a funeral a while back, I just found her support and steadiness so rich and compassionate. And she spoke about her experiences, and that was just magical for me to be received, to my words to be received and met, and then met fully to how I needed to receive them, and so those stories were quite beautiful for me.
Oh,
there's
beautiful
stories.
Wonderful. Yeah, Blake says that layers of druidry are what I find most magical. The deepening and unfolding, that is the stuff of the mysteries. When you set the process in motion, it just takes on a life of its own. Yeah. So, I mean, Hannah says, I think maybe you only feel this connection if you actually go to one of the gatherings. Correct me if I'm wrong. Well, I don't necessarily, not everybody goes to a gathering. Some people have gone on retreats, or some belong to a seed group. And, if you meet one other person that is a like-minded soul, that can be incredibly nurturing and nourishing. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree with that, because for me, it's a felt sense of community. It's the knowledge that there is a community there, and that if I'm brave enough to speak or to ask a question of the community, knowing that would be received in a way by somebody that I completely don't know. So it doesn't have to be a face-to-face meeting for me. I think I've sent emails to people asking them various things that I don't know. So definitely, I think it's being listened to, and some of the stigma, I suppose, I felt over the years of having a pagan path has been quite curious for me. So if I wanted to go onto the OBOD Facebook page, for instance, or just have a look, to touch in and be curious without having to have a conversation, but just knowing that it is there, is very helpful for me. And there's lots of things on Instagram. There's a way to connect through there, druidry through there, and to listen to the words that are spoken, and the beautiful poetry or expressions of people speaking about their lives and the environment that they live in is very nourishing for me. Yeah. But we are all different beings, so.
Yes. Gabriella says, I felt all these fuzzy belonging feeling without going to a gathering. When I actually attended one, it felt stranger and emphasized what was already there. Now, that's interesting, because you already had it, Gabriella. Pat says, I've just been to my first gathering. I loved it, but it was a whirlwind. Retreats are great for connection, but even online conversation over a long time can build it. And Blake says, I've only been to a gathering in the northeastern US, BAM, Massachusetts, outside from Grove meetings. And even in the height of COVID, I felt an incredible community connection. Technology helps greatly. I also have a strong connection to fellow friends and order members I've never met face to face. The heart and spirits knows and recognizes each other. Physical boundaries haven't been an obstacle. That's interesting to say that. And I know, I suppose these last 2 years have shown that we have created a much closer community through our online connection that has been really, really important for people who've never met another member. Yeah, and Ferdia just says this. I think one of the few benefits of the last 2 years is that many of us have found new ways to connect alongside seed groups, Gorse said, and gatherings. That's right. Yeah, and people are just, Stephanie says, I'm so grateful for the online community. There are no seed groups around me. So these live chats and other events and forums are so valuable. Yeah. So I suppose it's about finding which medium of connection suits you best. I mean, obviously I'm doing a lot of online stuff and I enjoy it. And actually my conversations online, I get to know people in a much better way by having these chats online than if I met you. I mean, I have met you at the gathering, but we've had short conversations. This is going to be a longer conversation. So it's about all of it. And then Ferdia says, if you build it, they'll come. Whatever it is, your grove of your seed group. Yes.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to do actually was to connect people a little bit more in the wider Druid community, is that I started sewing this dress with my story on it and of things that I've done and then as I was doing it, this red dress turned up in Glastonbury that some women have been sending around the world, which is amazing. But it's really what I would be curious to perhaps is the dress that's hanging up at the back there. And I would love it to send it out to different groves around the world. So some people that don't like connecting, like it took me a long time to be able to communicate on Facebook. I just thought it would be a really beautiful thing to do, to tell a story of Druidry and the weaving of that. It was something that I've been thinking about for a long time, but not been brave enough to speak it. So I just have.
You just have. And I'm curious, can we see the dress? So are you talking about, let's see it. So I have no idea.
And I am not an embroidery, gifted in the embroidery, but I enjoy it because it's something that it helps me. And I see it as, I weave my thoughts and love and joy into something or an experience. So. Actually, this dress was made by someone from one of the old OBOD camps that I don't think they go anymore, but so that's who it's made from, and it's made from linen. So she made the dress. So
okay. So she has embroidered you've embroidered your important events.
I've just, if I do something, if I go somewhere and I think, or I'm part of my Druid journey, okay, I've done the element of fire. So I'll just, it's very simple, very small. It's not, hang on, I don't know how to do it with the camera. So.
Oh, lovely.
So I put snake on, that really means a lot to me, and the Kabbalah tree, and then birch. And I
see the oak leaves, the spiral.
Just, yeah, it's very simple. And so this is the star. It's a star.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Star. So it's not perfect in any way, and some of them are very simple little symbols.
It's a triangle, isn't it? From what I can see, because it's yellow.
Yeah,
it's a bit pale.
Yeah, it's air, so that's air. And I just thought it would be a really great way to build community and just fill it full of story. Anyway, it's just a thought.
Well, I think people, that's a lovely idea. What a wonderful idea. Okay, it's getting, okay. Tell me how many people think this is a great idea and would love to take part in a project like this. Just put it on in. Pat Booker is dying to do some embroidery. I can hear her. Marcella, of course, is very, very good with her hands.
Yeah, don't look at the stitching.
Creativity, this is Darren says, creativity is beautiful, and that garnet embodies your story. Each stitch another star within your spiritual sky. Isn't that beautiful?
Mm.
Okay, I think Pat says yes, but not with a frock. Oh, come on, Pat. Frocks are brilliant. And if somebody teaches Ferdiad embroidery, he's in. Marcella says, me. Okay, there's something. So to create a dress, and I don't know where you get the dress or which one, or if it's like a druid robe or whatever it is, that anyone could wear it.
Anyone.
That can be Catherine, I don't believe that. I'm not artistic, sadly. If you can embroider a straight line, you can learn, it can be anything. Embroidery, it sounds intimidating, but it isn't.
There's just a circle here, because I did something with a group, and it's just
I see the circle, yeah, the little red circle, yeah.
It's not perfect at all, and that's the beauty of it. I love things if they're not perfect. I like to have a flaw in, so even if I think, oh yeah, I might have done that quite well, I'll make sure that I do a stitch where it's not fitting in, so that it reminds me that about that it's okay.
So you send one dress around the world, or around one around the world? Okay, so perhaps a druid robe. There's loads of space in a druid robe if you get a big flouncy one.
Yeah.
Okay, you have a few followers here, so I suggest go for it.
We'll see.
Okay, what you can do is you can put an ad or a notice on the OBOD Facebook page when you're ready, and say it's going to this group now, and then any Grove or C group who want to send it or to take it up. We may start with one country first, because you don't want it to go from UK to America back down to Australia. Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? That's a great idea. All right. Over to you. Yes.
It's just whoever gets it next sends it wherever they want to the next person next, I think. It's not a ship thing, just send it and see what happens.
Well, Gabriella says she can make a heart. Exactly. And Ferdia says, I'm trying to imagine what a druid robe that would fit me would look like on Eimear. Well, I'd have to get stilts, or you'd give me I could sit on your shoulder, maybe. Anyway, we'll see how it'll pan out. That is a wonderful idea. Yeah, and Marcella says she'd be happy to help. So yeah, wonderful. So when you think of your druidic practice, do you have a daily practice?
Yes. Yeah, I have a daily practice that I do. So I have I do a walking meditation and a sitting meditation in my garden every day. I do that every day, whether it's snowing, raining, whatever the weather, windy, whether I don't feel like it or not, that's what I do. It's about half an hour, sometimes it's an hour in the morning. I wake very early, so it works perfectly with everything else in my life that I do. So I would do I might do it changes, but mostly my practice starts and I walk around the garden and I look with gratitude and love at all my plants in my garden, all the different plants that I have growing. And I speak to the plants that I've got growing, and I say, various different things in my mind, walk around barefoot all the way around. And when I've finished, I'll go and sit quietly and listen. Maybe it'll be to the bees or watch whatever animals are awake at that moment in time, sit quietly. I've got a tiny little nature pond there. I always spend time looking at that, into the waters for a little bit. That's the beginning of my walk around the garden. It's only a small garden, but
beautiful.
That's what I do every day. It nourishes me. If I don't do that, I notice that I haven't done it. I have to be in my garden.
Wonderful. I mean, you've had an interesting career, an interesting life, and I'm looking forward for you to sharing this with our viewers. When has Druidry supported you?
It supported me most in some very difficult points in my life. The reminder of the connection to landscape is actually fundamental to my practice. If I didn't have that and the trees, I have a special place when I feel like things have, are too much. I go down to the River Chelp, which is just at the bottom of my road and runs along the house, and I sit with the water there, and I am with the water and with there's oak trees. Beautiful. The landscape here is beautiful, and that really nourishes me. And that's the most important thing. And the stars above, the starry sky, that ever constant illumination from the stars, and knowing that their light is not just static, that really helps me if I go out in the evening. And knowing, that all nature, all life is sacred. So that's what's really helped me in that point in my life. Even if I'm in pain, if I have a lot of pain, I'm reminded of my practice.
Uh-huh.
And it's easy to forget about it, but I can always come back to outside, and gratitude and love and being kind. Those are the most important things for me in my Druidry practice, I suppose. Yeah.
I mean, again, it's so simple, isn't it?
Yeah. Simple practices that I can connect in any state of my own personal being, distress, loss, joy. If I feel lost in the wilderness, just remembering that. Yeah.
So I know you write, and you do. And where do you get your awen or your imas from? Do you get it from nature, or do you sit in front of your screen, or do you have a notebook and just write, or where? Or do you get it from the water, like you said, water or the sky? Where do you get it from?
I get it from being outside. I walk the land a lot, and that's really where it comes from. And then over the years, I suppose walking on the landscape around where I live, or by the sea, or wherever I am, that's where the joy comes from for me. That's where my inspiration comes from. And also, I suppose I have got some really beautiful friends that were poets that have given me inspirational reading, and I suppose I really connect to sort of the older Renaissance poems, so the Romantics. Those really are close to my heart. William Blake, and deeply impacted my life when I was a teenager. His artwork, he really spoke to me, and I really loved his letters to Milton that he wrote. I love the way he writes, or used to write, Keats, and those various different things. So we'll look at them, and there's other people, John O'Donoghue, various, David White, and I find mostly at the moment listening to the stories, if I was going to in lockdown, was Martin Shaw. I really enjoy his storytelling, and he brings things alive, so I can listen to that on audio. I don't really like looking at screens so much, so most of my words would come from an experience with people, place, or nature. Yeah.
Would you like to share some of your writings with us?
I can. They are witterings. I am not a poet.
Witterings are great. I bet you our audience would love to hear witterings. Am I right?
I wrote something then. So this is something. Oh, hello. Just trying to find it on the thing because I can't remember them off by heart. Okay, I wrote something for. I wanted to write something for the International Women's Day a few years ago, and when I started setting up a group, and so I wrote this about women, and perhaps the journey that we take. There's so much about that. So it's called Goddesses Rising Up Together. Maiden Mother Crone, we carry the blood of our ancestors and our future within us. Kindness, strength, courage, compassion, transformation and gentleness, holding each other, a community gathers. In sovereignty, hearing all, seeing all, hearts open. We are in our time now. Speak up, speak out, step up. Time to be. We are enough, perfect in our imperfections. Sacred is the feminine. We honor each other with respect, support, truth, and love. Light a candle of unity so that we may shine brightly even in our darkest hours and shine more brightly in the light. Touch the earth so we may know we are connected to our roots. Know water so that we may see the ripples flow. Drink the water so we may be nourished. Feel the touch of breeze on the skin. We are alive. Look to the sky and see the infinite stars. We are all part of this universe connected. Rejoice are we. We can be the future if we wish. We are not our past. All we do makes for change. The gentle whispers of encouragement, to the eye contact exchanged in acknowledgement, to the warm greetings full of integrity and heart, and to the silent shared spaces of unknowing. Magnificent, gifted women shine.
Wow, that's beautiful. A lovely whitter. And people, there are a few whitterers here as well who engage in such things and who are absolutely wonderful. Just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So, yeah, that's very beautiful indeed. Lovely. That was beautiful, beautiful. Lots of very, very positive comments to your whittering. Well done. Wonderful words. Yeah. So, in addition to your writing, I know you have a private practice. How do you combine what you do every day with your druidry? Or, I mean,
for many years it wasn't connected at all, and I had to take a risk and almost lose everything to be able to change that and to sit where my heart feels most comfortable. And so now I integrate the druidry, most of the druid practice that I have, with I hold a couple of women's circles, teaching circles. I call them Cotswold Celtic Spiral. So we work with somatics, and connection to nature. And it's mostly people and shadow work. So speaking to the places that are not so comfortable and perhaps reframing is a big part of my work. So, and then I have a grief circle workshops, which we work through gratitude and grief. So this is monthly rituals that it's not ritual, workshops, which are held in a ceremonial way, I suppose, a simple ceremony for people experiencing grief and loss. And we come together with song and story and moving the body, that felt sense of being and speaking. So we're honouring the ancestors of ourselves and the story. So the storytelling from the Druidry practice really comes in there, and it's working with mostly women that are speaking their story as if it was a myth, and finding a way to reconnect with the story of loss or grief, whatever that may be, because that can show up in many ways. It could be environmental, it could be the loss of someone dear. So really weaving that in, and it's quite a long session, so it's probably 2 or 3 hours, and that's once a month. And we work through that. It's a very slow process, and bringing in some of the Irish traditions of keening and lamenting the story as well is very rich. So I hold that monthly. And then again, my working with the other groups that I have with women. And I do a one-to-one practice with people, somatics, somatics, alongside if they are having therapy, ideally. And it's in nature. So it's on the landscape around here. Even in the winter, I have one of those swim coats, those
dry robes,
whatever they're called, great big coat thing. I sort of look like a giant person. But it keeps us warm when we're outside. We're connecting to the trees and nature through moving the body, moving through the trauma of the somatic story within the body. And that's really very connected into the environment. And if I'm working with someone over a period of time, the seasons really come into play there. And the connection to self and story and movement and the light on the landscape and the environment or the nature that is around us while we're working together is intrinsically woven into that path. It's a non-verbal practice which people on a set time every day. So the Druidry really does come into its own with that work.
And are your clients Druids or just ordinary everyday people who come to you? That sounds absolutely wonderful. And I suppose how easy it is to connect with the landscape and tune in. So whether you're going into the dark time of the year or you're coming into the light half, or how profound, and that awareness and that connection between the inner landscape and the outer, how profound that can be.
Massively profound. And I think for me, a great deal of the journey is I really like working with people that aren't Druids as well, or aren't into Druidry or spiritual. That really nurtures my soul a lot to be able to offer that, and to be able, it gives me an affirmation in life that it's acceptable and understandable in the same way that it's received, in a way that I believe all nature should be an intrinsic sacred space which we walk on. It shows us that life is not eternal, is in such as a human life has a beginning and an end, and that really helps a lot of the people that I work with at end of life and within the grief work, and it allows them perhaps, or enables and gives permission to see that reflected around them all the time when we're working outside. Yeah.
Brilliant. And again, it's that simplicity. This isn't complicated. And I just find that doesn't cost. It's available to everybody who wishes it. I think that's so important.
Yeah, the cost. It means that we're talking of money, the evil. It means that because I don't have a set building that I use, it means that it's more accessible for people that don't have so much, or who that would be perhaps pushing the limits of their affordability in life, and that really makes it more accessible again for me, and that's absolutely important that's there and in place, that no matter, it's not about money, it's about connection. Well, obviously the money has a place there, but
there has to be an exchange, and
yes, exchange, but it makes a difference when I work outside. So I feel lucky that I have land that I can work on.
Brilliant. So you mean is it public land, or do you work in your own garden as well, or like?
I work in my own garden. I have over towards Winchcombe, there's a community estate there. I'm allowed to use the land there.
Ah.
Yeah, it's beautiful woodland, wonderful landscape. On the space is an old tennis court which has grown over and rewilded itself absolutely in the most beautiful way that nature can create.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And there's a place in Cirencester, some gardens there where I have permission to go there.
Great.
So I feel very blessed that I can do that.
And Gabriella says, I was sure Camille was working in trauma healing even before she spoke about it. She has an amazing, soothing, elemental energy, the kind that heals. Thank you, Gabriella. That is lovely.
Thank you. That's really kind. Yeah, I really appreciate that. It's because through my own life, I've had many. I have had experiences, and I would say that I am a survivor. That's part of my life experience, and I think that it really helps the work that I do because I have compassionate understanding and also distance from something. Life differently for me.
That's right, and I think having lived allows you to engage with other people in terms of their life experiences. So you did say, I know you died, or your heart stopped. Would you like to tell us about that?
Oh gosh, yeah. I've only just really started talking about this recently, over the last sort of 5-6 years, really.
Okay.
Yeah. To people, because it really changed my life around death. Even though I don't think you choose to work in that space, it sort of chooses you. It chooses you. So I had been working for some time with friends, colleagues that had come to that phase in their life or were experiencing illness. But for me, I suppose it was in 2007 that I had a ruptured ectopic at between 16 and 19 weeks. And I was at work, and I thought to myself, I'm quite a hardy, resilient being in the fact that I will keep going until I almost fall down. So that's
the pain, yes.
Just, it's fine. I was like, oh, it's fine. Oh dear, I don't feel great. I'm still going to work. It's fine. And so I went to work, and I was working, and I thought, oh dear, I'm really not particularly well, am I? And I just collapsed. I don't really remember much about that. I also had knocked myself out and fractured my face on the way down, because when bodies go, they go heavy. And that was sort of it, really. That was the, all I remember is the most amazing feeling of wellness and comfort and joy. I was obviously unconscious, but I felt like I'd moved slightly out of myself.
Okay.
And I was in this tunnel, which was sort of a beautiful oval shape. And it was just the most magical experience ever. And I could feel myself moving. And it was, I was in a state of absolute bliss. No body, no being, no nothing. And at the end, I could see this sort of dark figure at the end. And I was sort of moving down it, not as a human, not in this form, towards the end. And I didn't want to ever leave this place. It was the most purest place, no fear, no absolute joy, no extreme emotion, just is. And a silence that was just beautifully nourishing for me. And all of a sudden I could hear voices shouting, and then I thought of my son and my daughter. And I was like, no, I don't, I'm happy. I want to stay here. I'm going to keep going down to the end. There's somebody there. There's somebody waiting. And I really want to go there. And unfortunately, I did not go there, or fortunately. I was suddenly resuscitated and took in a huge breath. It was a physical, the physical sense of my body was like a huge wave coming up my body. And I just took this massive, I think it felt like an exhale, like that, but it must have been an inhale. And I remember being brought back to consciousness and then going to the hospital, and then almost the same thing happening again there. There's people rushing around, all the people rushing around, but I couldn't really remember it. I couldn't really remember what was happening. I just remember someone saying, "Oh, I think we need to phone the next of kin." So I remember them doing that. So I remember that very clearly. And then I don't really remember anything until I recovered. I came into recovery. I must have come into recovery, and I had an oxygen mask on my face. And the surgeon, it was a couple of days there, and I wasn't really sure what had happened. I just wasn't sure. And the woman that had done the operation, she said to me, "Well, you died. You had 2.5 litres of internal hemorrhage, and we didn't know what was wrong, because obviously I wasn't coherent when I went in, so they didn't know what the matter was." And she said, "You're so lucky to be alive." And at that moment, I felt so guilty. I thought, gosh, I've done something wrong. What have I done wrong? I was like, oh, I didn't mean to. I think I remember saying, "Oh, I'm sorry." I'm sorry about that. And so, yeah, it took me a really long time to recover. I just remember looking down, my legs were black, like bruised, like I'd been in a fight or something, like all the way up and up to my rib cage was bruised. I had a big black eye on my face, and it was an experienced journey, and that I still remember that felt sense of that peace. If I connect to that feeling of being in this tunnel, and or whatever it wasn't solid, it was very fluid. It was like the night sky is the way I would describe it. If you look at the night sky and how the clouds move, but it was dark. And I just lost my fear of life and attachment to anything. And the journey to recovery was quite difficult. I was on oxygen for a couple of days, I think, I remember. And I had this really sore throat, and I couldn't work out why I had a sore throat. And I think it's because they intubated
the tube down. Yeah.
Yeah. And from then, actually, I have quite poor memory recall, and I think it's to do with the operation. So sometimes my past things that happened a long time ago, it's very hard before that. It's quite difficult for me to sometimes remember them.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have to really think. It's not like a memory will come straight back. I have to wait, and sometimes it's just not there at all. And I still experience slight memory loss with names from before that, so it takes me a while to remember that. But I'm so grateful for that experience.
Wow.
I feel so grateful, and I feel so honoured that I had that experience. And it was almost like I could see myself. I wasn't in my body, I know that. And I knew that I was safe. This feeling of just absolute love and acceptance. And from then on, when I'm with people with death, I know in my heart that even though the journey into that place may be deeply sad, deeply full of grief and loss and hurt and pain, that there is a point where it will come that it will be okay. It will be okay, and you will be okay, and safe and held and loved, and whatever it is whatever word it is for them that would make them feel comfortable. So
Thank you for sharing that. I know one of my uncles had a cardiac arrest maybe about 10 years before he died, and my mother told me that he never feared death after that. And somebody else mentions here their mother, she had a similar experience, and has never had any. My mother said she could see herself in the operating table with doctors panicking around her. She was at so peace and she didn't want to come back. And Jane says, I've had similar experience when I go into a seizure. I would see bright light and a man figure walking towards me. I think it's lovely to hear that. And I mean, there are many people all over the world who've had, I suppose, near-death experiences and have a similar, describe similar things. And it's lovely for all of us then to hear of these experiences, so that death is not something to be feared.
Yeah, I do. And it really helps me. It comes back to the Druidry as well, that life has a beginning and it has an end. We go out and we come in, and it's a very similar process. The process is very similar: the disconnection, the wateriness, the fire, the air, and the elements are all there. They're all present in the dying as they are in the birthing. And it makes me laugh, because I always used to say, I really would love to be a midwife. I'd love to deliver a baby and see that life coming and see the processes and support that. And I just think it's quite ironic to go the other side of it's like a birthing, but in a different way.
And I mean, I know, I was with Howard when he passed, and that was a beautiful passing. And I was with my father, and I used to be a nurse. So having been with people as they're transitioning, how important it is to have a good death, but a pain-free one. And in both cases, they went very, very peacefully. And it was lovely to be with them as they breathed their last and supporting them. And again, it's love. And likewise, I agree, be able to bring babies into the world. It's very, very similar. I remember when I was in labor with my daughter in this room here, she was born in a pool just behind the other side of the room. And at one point I was just going into this inner space, and I thought, this is what it must be like when you're dying. I'm surrounded by people. I had gossips with me. I had my midwife and I had Howard with me. But I'm doing this alone, but I'm being held. And I thought, is this what it's like? The dying person is surrounded. The person who's lucky to die with people that they wish to have around them. But you make the journey on your own, except I wasn't being born, but I was giving birth. But I found it a very, very profound experience. So, and Gabriella says, when I was in a pool at about 8 years old, I let go of the inflatable ball. I just went under. I remember floating underwater and seeing myself do that from the outside of me. Then I woke up. Yeah, it's pulled towards the surface, but there was no one around who could have done that. Then I woke up, pulled towards the surface. I know David White, the poet, you mentioned him earlier. I think reading, he was someplace in the world, I can't remember, and he was swept off a rock into the sea, and he almost drowned. And he had a sensation of somebody picking him up and bringing him back to shore. And his mother had had a dream that she had saved him from the sea. Now, that kind of thing is just...
Yeah, I've heard that people, yeah.
Goosebumpy and tingly, that those kind of things, like you say, Gabrielle, nobody did it, but somebody did. That experience is incredible. Well, to me, I believe it. It's just because something happened. I think it's just beautiful. Yeah. And she said it was a positive experience, as it was sunshiny and lovely. Brilliant. Yeah. And then Dixie says, when I was stung by a jellyfish, I nearly collapsed. I remember my sight going first, then my hearing. I remember being very aware of my breath and the temperature. Now that, I imagine, might have been scary. Catherine says, I've never feared death, not even when I was young. I always think there's a better place. But that's just my thoughts still. Well, your thoughts are as valid as anyone else's. And, we all make sense of, we all have a worldview about how we live life and how we die and what happens when we die. And none of us knows for sure, but we all have some sense, or hopefully we do. Some believe there's nothing, and I hope that's okay. I have my own beliefs, but I won't know until it happens to see if I was wrong or not. But it's those thoughts and beliefs carry us forward, and you've had, a foretaste, which is lovely.
Yeah, it was rich, and maybe that won't happen, like you said. Maybe it'll be a different experience next time. But and I welcome that. Because everything changes. There's no set rule with me. I just think it's really important. But you're talking about David White, and I always really loved the poem about the well of grief, talking about it goes. Those who will not slip beneath the still surface of the well of grief, turning through its black waters to the place that we cannot breathe, will never truly know the source from whence we came. Water cool and pure, nor will they see the glimmer of light of coins thrown in by those who wished for something different. And I really love that poem.
It's beautiful. Absolutely. Okay, so Blake says, what is fascinating is even with variances, the similarities of experience, even across belief systems, gives me great faith in these commonalities. Even with a different lens, the framework seems there, speaking about death and what lies thereafter. Darren says, beautiful. My dear friend passed about a week and a half ago, and the ideas within this conversation has really helped me. We are all eternal beings, and once death comes, we gain an awareness of love like no other. Beautiful. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for sharing that, Darren. Yeah. So, when you think of your life, you've had a very, very interesting one. Yeah, just one question. Were you aware you were pregnant?
No.
Okay.
Well, no. I had a thought, but I hadn't confirmed it. And I just had, my son was 1, so at the time.
Okay.
So I hadn't really regulated my whole body, and I really wasn't conscious. I had how old was my daughter? My daughter was like 16 months, and I had a 1-year-old or something. So really priorities for my own well-being or consciousness of my own being was not really present. I felt like it was funny because at the time when I worked the dates back, I thought, gosh, yes, I actually knew I was pregnant, but I'd forgotten about it. And life was busy, you know, I was working and trying to look after 2 children at the time. It wasn't really something. So it was a bit of a shock. Yeah.
Wow.
Sad, very sad.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, and you know, ectopic pregnancies are very serious things, you know. And wow. Gabriella says, Fleur, do you mind posting the poem, please? I think that's, I think, Gabriella, you're talking about David White's one, is it? I think so. What's it called? I put it in.
It's called The Well of Grief. I have it in my memory banks, but I don't remember things exactly as they are. But that's mostly the.
Am I spelling his name right? Is it David White? And he plays, yes, with the W, I think. That's right.
Yeah.
Sandy Coombs said, I would love to see death spoken about more in schools and families. It's a natural part of life, which a lot of people are unable to speak openly about. I had a similar experience following a motorcycle accident, and it felt beautiful, but like a huge magnet pulled me back. This experience has helped me sit with others while they transition over to where they are going. Absolutely. Sandy, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Dixie says, I feel like we're afraid to talk about death, particularly the process in the UK. I'd like to think that we could do more and more of it, because, you know, you confront that which scares you and it no longer becomes frightening. And I know we do Ireland, in Ireland we do death much better, but I think the older ways are slowly slipping, you know, that things become more sanitized. I think the idea of having a wake, being around the body is really, really helpful. I grew up with that. I don't remember how old I was when I saw my first dead body. It was just there. So, and there was nothing to be, and we weren't protected from it. There was no need to. And yet others, children who have been protected from death, end up being very, very upset later, not being able to manage it. And then I feel like Dixie says, surely it's comforting to know what happens as the body shuts down, to know what to look for. Yeah. Sorry, Sarah, your dog recently passed away in your arms while you were giving her canine CPR. Sorry to hear that. But you know, you were with her, and that's what's really, really important, being with your animal as they go. That's the best gift you can give them. Dixie says, Sandy Coombe, I don't think the death rattle is scary. It tells me a patient is so comfortable they don't feel the need to clear their throat. Okay. Hannah says, I like the idea of being a death doula, but I wouldn't like to ask people for payment at times of sorrow. And Gabriella says, I'm not afraid of my own moment and I feel comfortable talking to others about it yet. I have a blockage in terms of accepting that about my family. Yeah, because it means having to let go. That's not an easy one. Who wants to let our families go? So, and then Blake, my very first funeral I ever attended, I was a pallbearer. Jump in with both feet, I guess. Yeah. And then Dixie wants to know, what's a death doula? It's somebody who accompanies people who are dying, who supports them in the whole process, maybe helps them talk about the dying process or what they would need in terms of while they're passing, their funeral, and allowing them to talk and maybe mediate sometimes with the family as well. Okay, and Marcella says, I think the old ways of grieving in Ireland are coming back. People have found little comfort in the sanitized way death has been dealt with. Well, that's good to hear, Marcella. I hope so. Yeah. Somebody says here, death is but a chair. George Herbert he keeps saying these words to himself. Is that the same as a Macmillan nurse? I don't know. Don't know much about Macmillan nurses. And then Poppy says, some say there's no death, the physical body dies, but the consciousness is eternal. Yeah. So, what would you say has been your greatest achievement, or something that you're most proud of?
Being here now. Being present to my own life, I suppose. My biggest achievement, apart from my children, who I love, but they're not really mine. I think stepping up and speaking my truth, and or speaking my story, speaking my story and sharing it, actually, and that has not always been easy, sharing that and speaking about my path. And I'm sure there's many things I've made some beautiful sculptures, and I've done lots of things like that. But my greatest achievement, when I said being here now, is like the ability to be comfortable with myself, and to be present to whatever is. When I'm sad, knowing that I'm sad, and when I'm joyful, knowing that I'm joyful, and being grateful for that, and grateful for the people that are around me, and having the courage to write the things that I feel down, and my grandmother always said, you can do whatever you want in the world if you have bravery and a sense of self, and not in the sense of self as the ego, but to know where you're going. She wasn't very much like that. My grandmother was a great matriarch. She listened and watched. And she actually was a midwife, but not an official midwife.
Yeah.
She was the community woman that people went.
Oh, brilliant.
So that's how I would answer that question in this moment, right here, right now. That's what it would be. To be able to say, I like to be outside with trees and nature, and that's what nourishes my soul.
Your biggest challenge that you've overcome?
My biggest challenge is walking away from a very long marriage and having nothing.
Wow.
And raising my children and having nothing, literally having nothing. Nowhere to live, nothing. That would be my greatest thing that I have overcome.
How did you do it?
My mother would say that it was stubbornness and determination. I called to spirit. Spirit of this land, spirit of this place. Goddess and Divine Mother, please carry me so that I do not drown. And it happened. A place came, and then everything else fell into place. And it was not easy. It was not easy at all.
Wow. Blake says, it's often said, it's amazing what you can do when you don't have any other choice. And that is sometimes, it's looking back and you think, how did I do that? How did I achieve that? How did I achieve the impossible and come through that impossible? And yet you do, because you have to. And there's something, inbuilt in us. It's like, well, I'm not giving up. I can't. That's the stubborn bit. And also with 2 children, it's like, yes, you have to go on.
I have to go on. Yeah. And I suppose I've got a Blake one here. Is to see the world in a grain of sand, and heaven in a wild flower, and hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. And so time, that really was very nourishing for me. It's the small things that are so precious, and linear time is not necessary when traveling in life. It can be, I had a job in a corporate world that brought me money, and then I was trying to do my practice that nourished me alongside that. Was very difficult to do. And so I gave up all of that steadiness. I gave up all of that security, that which does not nurture me anymore. And I moved away from that.
And did you give that up at the same time you left your husband?
It wasn't. It was a little bit beforehand, but I still had to make a choice then to do that, and to not return to that, where that would pay for. Well, I had no mortgage then. Like I'd paid for that. I'd really got on the mill of life. I bought my first house when I was 21. I was 22, so I was just working, trying to conform and to fit into the mold, which didn't fit with my heart space or my philosophy on life. So yeah, it was a big thing.
I mean, you gave up everything at once, almost. It's like all the certainties, of an income, of a roof over your head, of marriage, even if it wasn't happy. But sometimes the devil, and you just said, okay, goodbye to all of it. I mean, one of my questions is, what's the most reckless thing you've ever done? Is that one of them?
Oh. I was going to say I gave up my community of spiritual group as well at the same time as that. So it was quite a big thing. No, the most reckless thing, and it will make you laugh, and it's similar to what other people have said, is probably stepping into a new relationship and doing it very quickly. And that was reckless. And after I'd had such a considered, careful life, I like to think about things, and I don't tend to just do things without thinking about them, which can be quite annoying to people sometimes. I just need to think about that. Yeah, I suppose that would be, yes. I met someone, and then within 6 months, well, my partner, husband, JJ, and then it was probably 2 months in, and then he said, "Oh, why don't we get hand-fasted?" And I was like, okay, which was really unusual. And then that happened probably 6 months, 7 months into that. That was a big thing. Scary. And I didn't know that he was into Druidry. I had no idea that was his path, because that's not how I met him. So I had no idea.
Okay.
I didn't know this person, JJ Middleway. I didn't know that person. So that was also a very interesting journey as well. But it was also beautiful as well. I think the first time we met, not the first time we met, one of our sort of dates was that we went to Glastonbury. And we went up the tour, and I went into autopilot. I always have this little thing that I do when I go up there. I go up, I do the tour 3 times, I go and speak to the directions and do it. I just started doing it, but then he was doing it with me. And I was like, hang on, what's going on here? And that was really beautiful. And but even then, he didn't really speak about his practice. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I know the answer to this, but Poppy wants to know, are you still with him and happy?
Yes. Very much so. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's I like Howard and I, we got married after 7 months, and having both been widowed and separated only 9 months previously. It's not something you'd ever recommend to anybody, and it was the best thing ever to have done. So I love these risks that work out, because everything is a risk, until you discover it isn't. Or what's reckless for some isn't, it's the right path for another. Ferdy, it says, sometimes when everything gets stripped away and you feel like you've left with nothing, all that's left is to live in the moment and find peace in doing just one little thing. I think so, absolutely. And Ferdy, you've been through your own challenges in the last 2 years. And I think it comes down to it. And then it's that one little thing in that tiny moment. You mentioned gratitude earlier, Fleur, and how important, I think, if we can have gratitude for the smallest of things.
Absolutely.
Poppy says that experience showed how powerful you are. So when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. No one can ever accuse you of you. No one can ever accuse you of you can't. That is so true. But it's rich, beautiful lives are only woven through all these adversities. This is from Jane. What wisdom you'll have when you get even older. So brave, but sounds worth the outcome. Absolutely. Okay, Gabriella says, 'tis a risk when it doesn't work out. When it works out, it's a romantic fairy tale. I don't know if you and JJ think you're living in a romantic fairy tale, because sometimes there's awful things in that romantic fairy tales. They're bloody hard work as well, as any good relationship is, if it's worth it at all. That's wonderful. Do you have any regrets, Fleur?
I don't think I do, actually. I don't have any regrets. I have thoughts that perhaps, that would have been nice to do that.
Yeah.
I perhaps wish I was, I would think to myself, maybe, I don't know why I just didn't do that. Why didn't I do that then? And I realized that was just a learning. So for me, it's a learning. That happened at that time because it needed to happen at that time. I chose this life. I chose this path to a certain extent. And so perhaps I should have gone to the Northern Ballet. I'd love to have studied English literature and done higher education, but I don't feel like it's a regret. I feel like it just enriches my life.
Wonderful. Is there anything you change about your life? I suppose maybe you've just kind of touched on that.
What would I change? At the moment, no. I would love to own some land somewhere. I would love to have enough money to be able to do that and have have a place there to share with people, to come and express themselves fully. I think my life is rich and full at the moment, and I'm grateful for what I have. Anything extra would be a joy. Depends on what the other things are. So be careful the words that you speak. I think that's it. Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for. You may get it.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Do you have any more poetry that you'd like to share? Witterings, sorry.
Poetry. But do you know what was really lovely the other day? After the gathering, I noticed somebody had put a post and then they tagged me in it with some photos. And I thought, I recognise those words they put there. And they posted one of the words that I'd written. So I don't know where they got them from, because I'm not very good at advertising myself. But that was really nice. And I think I'd written those after a gathering. I could do that, read that.
Oh, yes, please. That would be lovely.
Yeah. I think it's at the solstice, summer solstice in 2018 or something like that. I've written those. I can't remember the day. But I think it was about I'd taken a photo as everybody arrives at the Stonehenge. And I'd just taken a photo of the light on the landscape. And I often, I think I might have written this about some trees as well. There was some trees that I'd visited, and there was sort of like a path in the centre. And I'd taken this black and white photo, and the trees were like creating this archway over the path. And I just thought, my goodness, that is just so beautiful. They are like the ancestors standing, and then the light from behind the path was illuminated. It wasn't a real path, it was just the path through. And I thought, gosh, how blessed am I to be able to see this with my eyes and my body. Like, I see things with my physical being. So it's just a short one here, and it's I was obviously using the word goddess a lot of the time. So, it says, to make it bigger because my eyesight, even with glasses on, is not beautiful. It's the landscape of the goddess, the landscape of our bodies, breathing and swelling, undulating with movement. The stillness, the gateways, the watchers, interwoven with the finest gossamer threads, the very vibration of existence all about us. The ever-changing curves and lines birthing into consciousness, from darkness to light, and then returning.
Beautiful. Wonderful witter. It is beautiful.
I've got a wittering about the menopause, if you want that.
Oh, yes.
It's a little bit longer, this one, but not hugely longer. It says, I wrote, you know, when you got them out, hot flushes and sweat. I'm sweating now, you know. It's like, why? I'm sitting. So I wrote about the menopause. Entering now a time of deep stillness, journeying deeper into the inner sacred sanctum. Let's seed our soul and bury it deep within the earth. Find a little nurture. Find stillness alone and curiosity in sharing. Let's give thanks for the times that have passed, our lived experience, journeys of joy and grief, into a time of reflection and acknowledgement. Reveal the beauty in the wounds and healings of teachings past. Surrender to the unknown. Honour the ancestors of these lands, the multi-generational stories moving into alignment. Allow their wisdoms, their deep understanding of what is. The ancients who dwell in the spaces between. Listen carefully. What is it that is calling you? Take care to walk gently with yourself and hear the resonance of the deep heart drum, slow and steady. Give yourself permission. View from another perspective that inner radiant light that is your home. Celebrate coming home to yourself, your spirit of freedom, spirit of place.
Coming home to yourself. Beautiful. Thank you. That's wonderful. Absolutely beautiful. It's you were talking about sweating and being hot. It's around gaining, like Bridget, the goddess, mastery over fire and water.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes.
I found that a beautiful reframe for me. So when we think of the world as it is right now, one concern that you have.
Concern. My concern perhaps would be that for kindness, perhaps sometimes the lack of kindness in social media, that is my concern. My concern perhaps is that the larger corporate businesses aren't listening to the stories that people are telling them about the environment. So I worry about that a little bit. I worry about the conformity that my children have to bear and to witness. My worry would be that the complexities of their life is so different from how I was when I was their age. I worry about the environment, and I worry about pollution, and I worry about connection. I worry about that a lot. I think for me, I think the earth is on its journey, whether we like it or not. So that is a view of mine, that perhaps we're on a cycle of change and resolution, whatever that may be. And so my fear is for the younger generation, and how they will grow into that, and will their voices be heard. I think freedom of speech is so important, and within that, the diversity of community. And I feel some sadness over the fact that perhaps there's not as much tolerance in differences as there could be. I would really like it that individuals could have differences and it be okay. It's okay that you do this. It's okay that you want to do that. And I really can listen to you. I really hear what you're saying, and I really value that, your view. And this is my view, and that's okay. And living together in harmony with those differences. I think that's really important to have. I worry that there's not the availability currently so much in the wider community. I am not talking about little groups of people, because there's so many people out there doing amazing work, really their trees, standing up, and with all of their strength. But I'm really speaking about the everyday life, and the small things, the little things that each and every one of us can do, and acceptance of differences is sort of my worry, that it's okay. We don't have to all have the same druidry. We don't need to have the same environmental view. We don't need to have the same view on the COVID or whatever that is, all of these things that are current, and war, and finding a place where that can sit side by side and not fighting against each other in that way with words. The wordsmiths that are speaking at the moment, I feel they're weaving something that is not available to everyone, and that does worry me a lot about the community.
And I can understand. I grew up. I remember I had a very good history teacher, Mrs. Reid, and she talked about the censorship that was in Ireland, and how our great writers were all censored for one reason or another. And I remember even there was strict censorship even with films that were shown. We don't have it now, but in this current climate, the level of censorship is frightening, because I remember the impact censorship had in Ireland. And then when I think of the censorship on social media around people with different views, if it isn't the mainstream narrative, it's cancelled or whatever, and how sad that is, and that we look for a diversity, but we don't allow diversity. So there's mixed messages around difference and differences of opinion. I know in the order we certainly encourage diversity. We have, you know, Druidry has many expressions and people are welcome. And then you look at in the world of social media, where so much of life seems to get played out, and there's very little acceptance of different worldviews, and that is disappointing, and it's scary. I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think there could be so much, or even 1% more harmony in the communication of differences. Just that 1% would make such a huge difference, and the power at the moment feels very unbalanced in that space. And there's many things within that communication of differences that covers such a huge range of ways of being, ways of living, expressions of living, environmental living. And sometimes I have a teacher, Alexander Derwin, she's an amazing woman. And she really says, unless we listen to the people that feel like they're not heard, or maybe speaking the words that do not feel comfortable to perhaps me or somebody else, the progression, that sense of progression can't really shift itself, because everyone has a voice that needs to be heard, or their pain needs to be listened to. And a lot of expression comes from deep-rooted education and isolation of view. So it's quite curious for me that I feel like it would make such a difference. I mean, I've done environmental work, I've been out there, I've walked and I've talked, and I've stood there and I've stood for, spoken the language with my body to stand up and doing demonstrations and things. I've done that since I was a younger woman. But now I feel like this is a different part of, I don't feel like I need to do that so much. I would like to listen more, and perhaps it's a different form of expression that I really feel that in my body, that there are people that will be the warrior, that will fight, and it's sitting slightly different with me in the fact that it would be really nice to build bridges in this area. I think it's very important, especially, I don't want to say especially, because that's not really, I mean, for women to reframe story, and women really reframing that and listening to how that feels and when that starts to happen. Because a gentle, loving, kind approach to listening to story and reframing it can feel somatically in the body as it does in nature. If people are using weed killer and God knows what else, then nature reacts to that. So for me, it's the same type of thing, but with humans. We're putting stuff on that feels toxic, and the environment is barren.
That's right. Darren says, I think we're becoming so individualized each against each other. Forget the community and connection. I believe many hear this call, though, and spaces like this will help remind us of the importance of coming together. Thank you. Jane says, I worry about the divide and conquer agenda from people on the left side of education system and political spectrum is trying to push. The divide is very, very sad. And so what, if anything, gives you hope about all of this?
Nature, community, expressing that in community, in communities like this where all is welcome, you know. There's people in the order that don't always agree with each other, you know, like there's people in life, but that's it. But it comes to a place, modeling a good life. That's what gives me hope. And I'm not looking to change the world or everyone, but consciously behaving in a way that is in integrity with my landscape, my interior landscape and my exterior landscape, expresses that to others. And maybe then other people, my children, will do that. They express it. They're so funny. They express that to their friends, you know, and it's a ripple effect. And I really think that is a possibility. It's a possibility of change and the curiosity of living a life. And that's what gives me hope.
Curiosity is an important one. When we talk about in psychotherapy, you know, that notion of respectful curiosity or having a fascination with story, somebody else's story. And not about the glamour of what you see on social media, but here's my story. It's an ordinary story. I have nothing to tell. You told me that too.
I did.
Anyone listening to me would agree with that. But that I have a fascination with people's stories because it's amazing what comes out. Jules Weaver said, so much talent and insight. You've such a voice in your writing. Please consider publishing these fine words. And these conversations for me are incredibly rich. And then the contributions from our listeners add to that richness, because it's that kind of meeting of minds and souls, or actually listening to a concept or hearing an idea for the first time and actually saying, wow, this really speaks to me, or this really challenges me, but being open to it and having that space for all of us to be able to speak, I think is really, really important. Gabriella said, I made a midsummer flower wreath while listening to this fine fire chat. The inspiration is threaded in. Thank you. That's nice. So just something that's come to me. 3 things you'd like to leave behind in the world. Only 3 now.
The trees that I've planted.
Yeah.
A story of the land. It's hard. 3 things. To leave only footprints is what comes to mind. The gentleness of my step upon the earth. And maybe the whisper in the wind that can echo back through to speak to my children. So that's what it would be, to speak to my children of the words that are in my body, and for them to perhaps echo that with their voice or actions and their way of being.
That's beautiful. That whittery thing, even though you haven't written it down, is very poetic. I think it's beautiful.
Okay.
So we're coming to the end of our time, and I always end with 2 questions. What is your favorite season, and what is your favorite ceremony to mark the wheel of the year?
I like Samhain. I like Samhain. I love Samhain. I love it because of the smell of the earth. I love it of the smell of the earth and the magic of colours that are in the land. It's almost as if the whole world becomes illuminated with all of these different shades and nothing. Yeah. And the rawness of the plants and the spaces. It always reminds me there's space now. There's space for something to refresh and regrow. And I love the skies in that time of year. It's near where my daughter was born. I always say she's of the stars, because when she arrived, I was like, God, where did you come from? I literally said that. So it really reminds me of life, actually, and the ancestors and my grandmother had a huge, and her sister, they raised me, and her mother And they had hard lives of endurance, you know, and then they lived. So my great grandmother, you know, they travelled to England. They weren't from here, and so it reminds me of the ancestors and the stories of that.
Where did they travel from?
My grandmother is from Ireland, so that's where she came from, and they travelled. No, not my actual grandmother, her mother, and then they lived in London, the South London, in a community, and then they moved to another place. So they came here. They travelled here, and she always used to tell me stories of this time of year. So with my grandmother at this time of year, she always used to get teapot out, and I never really understood what she was doing, but it was her best teapot out of the cupboard, and she had this china teapot that was white. I don't know if it's Royal Doulton or whatever. It was with big roses on it, and it's like, oh, it's really exciting because I don't know why she used to do it this time of year, but now I do. I probably do. She used to go, come here and sit with me, and we'll make tea, and then we'll look and see what the tea's going to say to you for the year. And I always used to think she was so magical. Oh, and she always used to say, look for the spaces in the leaves, and so that's why it also reminds me of Samhain. That space.
Mm-hmm.
What is it there? That space between, and I suppose when I was little, it was between tea and the leaves. So you know, what is that between the water and what sits at the bottom? Yeah. So it was quite a beautiful time of year.
Oh, that is just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Yeah. Gabriella says, thanks, Fleur and Eimear. Just drank from the deep well. Clarity, refreshed and inspired. Thank you from my heart. And then Julia says, I learned so much from these conversations. Oh, wait a second time. Where is it? Sorry, Julia. Every week it's a new thought or way of looking at things. Such a rich archive of wisdom being created with these chats. And that, Julia, I agree, is thanks to my guests. I just think that the weaving through conversation of ideas and sharing is absolutely magical. I agree with you. And Marcella, what a profound and thought-provoking fireside chat. I'll be sitting with it for days to come. Thank you, Marcella. Philippa says, these fireside chats are a very special time. I get so much from them each time. So different, but always interesting and inspiring. Thank you for this magical time. Blessings. So, Fleur, it's been an absolute joy talking to you. Hannah says, great chat. Reminds me to look internally. Absolutely. Fleur, it's been an absolute joy talking to you. So I'll allow you to say goodbye, and then I'll send you who's available. Don't go away because we can look at some of the comments together. So if you want to say goodbye to everybody there.
I would like to say goodbye, everyone, until we meet again. Maybe I'll meet some of you again. And thank you for your comments. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for patience and kindness. Thank you. Thank you from my heart.
Okay, see you soon. So thank you so much for joining us for this evening's chat. And I wish you all a lovely evening or afternoon or morning, or if you're watching a recording of this. Thank you so much for your comments. And as always, how you enrich these conversations with your own contributions are really, really appreciated. So I look forward to seeing you next week for another fireside chat. So I suppose we're still, and today is the 24th or 23rd of June. So for some people, this is St. John's Eve, and in Ireland, and I imagine in other places, it's a night for bonfires as well, when there's shenanigans. Well, traditionally there was hijinks and fires and all sorts of fun. So wishing you many blessings at this time. So we're still in solstice mode. So Bannacht hi an Greenstad, Jeev Galer, the blessings of sound to you all. Until we meet again next week, Slán go fóill.